Hi, I'm Vržina, and draw me like one of your French girls. The arts, arguably the peak of human evolution, represent our cultural progress as a human race and never fail to further develop our opinions. They express the artist's idea and mindset and give us another angle of seeing life. The arts I'm talking about generally encompass visual art, literary art, and performing art. From paintings to this, any kind of new and unique expression driven by creative impulse is analyzed and criticized to death. Well, except for video games. From the dawn of gaming, a heated debate has been led between the fine art critics and gaming community. Video games have been called childish, unexpressive, and too constrictive to be considered art. Any movement was shunned, and everyone who pushes the idea gets mocked. Why is that? Now before we start, let's look at a little history of the battle that is currently raging in the arts community. Video games were popularized on the market in the early 70s, not because they were interesting and thought-provoking, but because they were, well, fun. They were a means of wasting time, getting a little enjoyment out of life. Back then, nobody could believe that something as simple as a yellow shape eating pellets while escaping ghosts can evolve into something even remotely profound. However, the problem isn't that games have stayed in this childish and immature state. The real problem lies in the people that don't see the video games have progressed to a blend of masterful visuals and brilliantly engineered narratives. Nevertheless, even as soon as the early 80s did people start pushing the idea of video games being art. In March 1982, it was suggested that games be entitled to constitutional guarantees of free speech as under the First Amendment. Yeah, take that! However, the court decided that games were no more expressive than pinball, chess, or card games. This is understandable for that time, but some revolutionaries were unrelenting. Museums started showcasing games, the first one being the Museum of Moving Images, a retrospective look at the outdated video games. This is considered a big step as it opened the doors of this fascinating new world to critics and art enthusiasts alike. After that point, the community didn't really progress for a while, as in 2002, Judge S.N. Limbaugh, after being shown games such as Mortal Kombat, Doom, and Fear Effect, said they were no more expressive than bingo, and they failed to express ideas, impressions, feelings, or information unrelated to the game itself. While this was defeating, only a year later, Professor Tiffany Holmes, struck by the use of outdated graphics and techniques as an homage towards older games, decided to conceptualize a definition for art games. She defined art games as an interactive work, usually humorous, by a visual artist that does one or more of the following: challenges cultural stereotypes, offers meaningful social or historical critique, or tells a story in a novel manner. The paper further clarified that an art game must contain at least two of the following: A. A defined way to win or experience success in a mental challenge. B. Passage through a series of levels that may or may not be hierarchical. Or C. A central character or icon that represents the player. This was met with criticism, but surprisingly it came mostly from the gaming community, as people thought the games were too pretentious or snobby. However, this is the closest gaming has come to the recognition it deserves. Now, art games can be a lot of things, even art mods and machinima, but mostly tend to be games that offer a different or more adult view on games. While some of the games are pretty messed up, like this one, a lot of the AAA titles are considered masterpieces by gamers, game journalists, and art critics alike. This includes Final Fantasy VII, Grim Fandango, the Bioshock series, and pretty much everything made by Valve. Along these, lately more and more indie games are considered art, linking the bridge between conventional gaming and obscurity. Professor Celia Pierce first noticed the overlap, a revolutionary also responsible for multiple books and countless essays on why video gaming should be considered art. People like Professor Tiffany Holmes and Celia Pierce are the reason the debate is shifting in favor of gaming. In 2006, the French Minister of Culture characterized games as cultural goods and a form of artistic expression. He also included two French developers and Shigeru Miyamoto in the Order of Arts and Letters, furthering the recognition of games as an art form. C'est génial! And finally, the United States Supreme Court ruled that video games were protected speech like other forms of art in June 2011. So why, with all of this, was there still such criticism towards the Art of Video Games exhibition by the Smithsonian in 2012? Why do these old white men, critics, still hate games so much? When games have started posing legitimate questions and when they give us intelligent insight into today's world, why is the prevailing opinion still so unwelcoming? Well, some of the major criticisms can be pretty harsh. Hideo Kojima himself believes video games are not an art form as they're designed to satisfy the player as opposed to painting, which only expresses an opinion, for instance. I don't know if it was that satisfying playing a 2-hour game, was it? While his statement is true to an extent, I urge you to look at games like Gone Home or Journey. Some people absolutely despised Gone Home for its lack of content and gameplay mechanics, but it still tells an amazing tale in a very original way. Isn't this, by definition, art? Another argument states that a lot of video games are shit. Well, there are bad games, or games that are here just to be mindless fun. This is no different to bad movies or music. Is music not an art all of a sudden just because of people like Justin Bieber? Of course not. Everything has its ups and downs. It just so turns out a lot of people compromise artistic vision for profit in the gaming industry. People also tend to criticize the storytelling, saying it's a mere representation of a story and just mirrors movies. They say there are too many rules enclosing the experience, it's just too much like sports. It's agreeable that video games can oftentimes look like movies, and even reflect them with cutscenes, but more and more are developers finding new ways of giving us the experience, deliberately avoiding cutscenes and exposition to evolve the genre. But finally, predominantly, it seems that the main problem is a lack of information. The people that are considered unrivaled in this territory aren't the ones to log into YouTube every day and watch the newest trailers. In other words, their conservative opinion here is not due to a lack of intelligence, but interest. Roger Ebert, a famous film critic, decided his opinion against games, saying he doesn't deny that games can be a visual masterpiece, but lack the civilized ingenuity of plays, poems, or films. He said this right after Half-Life 2 came out, a game that showcased truly how much gaming has evolved into a mature storytelling art form. So I ask, why is there such a massive gap between games and other forms? He also stated that there's a goal to games. You can win it, and it ends. There's an outcome. I ask, don't movies have a designed ending? You are left with the experience. Finally, he also said he doesn't believe multiple outcomes should be able to occur, saying it would be pretty awful if we had a happy ending to Romeo and Juliet. I ask, isn't art made to evolve, as long as the outcome fits the atmosphere? For something that is supposed to welcome novelty with open arms, people can be pretty picky about its definition. Art should evolve and embrace new ideas, as have video games. That's how our culture ultimately progresses. Is it really that hard to believe that a game like Bioshock Infinite can be considered art if something like 90 tuna cans filled with feces can be considered art? That's nasty, seriously, just get that off screen. This isn't the first time critics have considered something a joke, something that later prevailed into being a major art form. Look at film, an art that was for a long time considered absolutely humorous by people, widely regarded it will never amount to anything. But people started taking chances, introducing adult themes, experimenting with new abilities, evoking emotion and making you care for what's happening on screen. The same things games are doing today, growing and adding more beauty. Works such as Citizen Kane made films what they are today, and hell, works such as Watchmen made comic books what they are today. So why couldn't works such as Spec Ops: The Line give games the same push the other media had? No matter how stubborn you are, There is no denying that video games are now more than something for people living in their mom's basement.
Shut up, Mom! Stop!
Video games are now an odyssey into something new, and as beautiful and novel as any other art form. In the words of game designer Kelly Santiago, games might not yet be at a high art level of films and photography, but they sure as hell are breaking through. Games are currently in their infancy, and it will take a long time for them to grow into adulthood. Even Roger Ebert later said this, even though it was in a harsher manner. But hey, we're trying. And if some of the astonishing visuals, intelligent gameplay, and fantastic storylines don't convince you, then I'm sure they will in the very near future. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please like it and tell me your opinion on games and if they should be considered an art form. If you generally like video games, art, or anything else here, subscribe to us and go check out our awesome little site, A Pixelated View. It's better than IGN. You can find my personal channel on Post-Apocalyptic Central, and you could also subscribe there if you want. Again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.
Blackwater, out!